The rain spattered against the window of my room at the West Falls Asylum. I sat on my bed, just listening to the light pitter-patter of the water against the glass. The noise cleared my head. After having been checked into the asylum by my family, I started to come to terms with my diagnosis of stress-induced psychosis. Apparently, the stress of my 2-year anniversary of my layoff from the police force was just too much for me to handle. But that was really not what sent me over this mental edge. I can deal with the fact that I got laid off, but not with the fact that there was another murder in West Falls, identical to the ones I was investigating from the case that got me laid off. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the Secrets of a Shadow. I sat on my bed, the only place I could sit in this small, cramped room. It was 6 a.m., Monday, the 19th of August, 1995, and in just a few short hours, I was going to be released from my room to join the others here at the West Falls Asylum for the mentally insane. A nurse, specifically a nurse named Darlene, was going to come by at exactly 8 a.m. and undo the lock of the outside of my door and escort me to the common area, where I would spend the rest of my morning until I met with my psychiatrist that oversaw the evaluation of my mental state today. He would then prescribe me some pill that I would take and then mellow out for the rest of the day in a semi-comatose state from the medication. It was not ideal, but it was better than being lost in a world that did not exist anymore. 8 a.m. rolls around and things proceeded exactly as planned. Darlene's heels clicked across the tile floor on the hallway and soon waltzed into my room with a polite smile. She handed me my instructions for the day, a long list of mentally soothing exercises to keep my psyche calm and organized, as well as a schedule for the day. I thank her and begin my trek to the common area of the asylum, a large cafeteria-style room with a number of chairs and tables to play mindless games with other patients. It sure felt like a prison, with a complete lack of freedom and structured schedules, but maybe this was for the best. Suddenly, a voice from outside the window caught my attention. It was a woman yelling. Actually, come to think of it, it sounded a lot like my wife, Sarah. I walk over to the window to see a spectacle upon the grass. 2 large security guards were escorting my wife, Sarah, off the premises as she was screaming something. But what was it that she was saying? All that I could make out from this distance was that he is not crazy, and you cannot keep him here forever. What was she talking about? She was the one who checked me in here. Just as suddenly as my wife appeared, she disappeared out the gates. I stared out the window at the grass, not comprehending what I had just heard. But my thoughts were soon put to the back of my mind as I felt a looming presence behind me. I turned my head to see that one of the facility's security guards stood behind me. He asked me to step away from the window, and I obliged to do so. Rule number 615 of this place. No going near windows, as they are a suicide risk. I do not see how this could be the case, as the windows were bolted shut and lined with bars on the outside, so that even if you made it through the glass, there was no chance you could hit the ground. I just sighed in frustration and sat down next to my new friend Lewis at a table nearby. We began playing cards until his name is called to go see the psychiatrist. I sit back and wait my turn when I see it. A small symbol on the wrist of one of the guards. It was subtle, but it was there. That wretched red symbol I had been fighting against the latter part of my career. That red compass rose. Doctors just kept telling me it was the symbol of the hospital that I was seeing. But why would someone get their workplace logo tattooed on them? I had to get to the bottom of this. It just didn't make any sense. Just then, my name was called and I got up to go to the back room to see my shrink. My footsteps echoing off the walls of the silent room. Darlene was waiting for me at the door, and I thanked her as I walked through. She just smiled politely and waved to me as I entered. something did not seem right about her today. Something seemed different, but I just could not put my finger on what it was. Maybe it was her slightly too cheery demeanor, or that polite wave. Either way, I had bigger problems to focus on, like how to get out of taking this awful medication that just put me into a lethargic state. The psychiatrist's office was a large open office with a desk at one end and a small sofa at the other end. The psychiatrist, Dr. Bradford Zarkovian, sat behind his desk, writing some notes. He greeted me cheerfully when I walked in and motioned for me to sit. He asked me about my day. I replied that I was fine, and he just smiled. He asked me about how I was feeling, and I replied I felt fine again. Maybe, if I pretended to be sane, they would not force feed me that medication. The words of the woman, who I was still pretty sure was my wife, echoed through my head. "He is not insane. You cannot keep him here forever." Those words just stuck with me. Was she talking about me? My thoughts were interrupted again by Dr. Zarkovian asking what I was thinking about. I told him nothing much, and that I was excited to be leaving here soon. Dr. Zarkovian frowned. I think he was the first person I had seen frown. He asked me what made me think I was going to be leaving here soon. I told him that I was feeling much better and that my delusions had gone away, and that should mean that I am better enough to return to society. He frowned again, and said that was really for him to decide. I asked him what that was supposed to mean, and he explained that because the police had been involved, the courts had declared that the only person that could release me was Dr. Zarkovian. He then asked me if I still thought there was a cult in West Falls. I looked at him blankly for a second. I replied that there had always been cults in West Falls. I assumed there would be one here today. Very well, was the response Dr. Zarkovian gave before prescribing me more meds that I would have to choke down. I grimaced, but Dr. Zarkovian did not seem to notice. He just handed me a sheet of paper to take to the nurses, probably Darlene, before ushering me out of the room. I stood to walk out and glanced back over my shoulder to see Dr. Zarkovian waving at me. That is when I saw it. Or did I really see it? A small red tattoo on his wrist of an odd compass rose, printed in red ink. The same symbol I had seen on the dead bodies. The same symbol I had seen in my psychotic fit. That same symbol that had haunted me for years. But what was it doing on my doctor's wrist? Why would he have that tattoo? Maybe there was a deeper meaning to it all. I tried to rack my brains for memories on what that symbol could mean, but my thoughts kept getting interrupted by the nurses asking me about which medication I needed. I handed them the piece of paper and was handed a small cup with a yellow liquid in it that kind of smelled like whiskey. I set it down on the table and tried to piece together my thoughts again, but the pattering of the nurse's nails on the table caught my attention and my mind started to fog. I looked around. What was I doing? Oh, you know what? That's right. I was taking my medicine for the day, to keep those pesky delusions at bay. I picked up the small cup with the yellow liquid and took a big sip. It tasted almost sweet. I laid back in my chair and felt the medication begin to kick in. The world started swirling and soon went black, just as it did every day now. It was a feeling I kind of liked now. It was a feeling that I was getting used to. But today, something changed. I don't know how to describe it, but things began to change. The swirling increased, much greater than it had before, and the blackness seemed to envelop me, closing in on all sides. I screamed as loud as I could, but the silence only deafened me. As soon as it started, it all stopped. I opened my eyes and was met with an untimely sight. I was still in the asylum, but the building was old and decrepit. I sat in the middle of the large cafeteria-style room, tied to a chair. I struggled against the restraints, but it was no use. I looked around, and that is when I spotted the group of people standing in front of me. They were dressed in black, but on each of their wrists was a red tattoo. So, this must be the group behind the murders. One of the members approached me. His face was painted white with big black shadows across his eyes. His pupils were dark and shadowy. He smiled, revealing a set of brilliant white teeth, and asked me if I saw the light. I just stared at him. One of the others called out to the man with a tone of fear in his voice. I think they called him Spectre? I thought I heard one of them say that I was not the right one and that I was fighting this way too hard, and that just seemed to annoy Spectre. He flexed his large muscles under his tight shirt and stood up from the crouched position he was in to talk to me. What were they talking about? Was I chosen for something? The rain had started pounding on the roof of the asylum. Drips from the puddles could be heard as the water leaked in from the roof. My head started to spin. What are you going to do to me? I blurted this out louder than I expected my voice to be. Spectre just smiled at me again. His response was cool and calm, his voice deep and dark. He told me he was helping me to see the light, to awaken my soul, whatever that meant. I stared at him blankly, and Spectre just sighed and motioned to one of the others, who looked very similar to my nurse Darlene. She pulled out a large needle and injected me in the arm again. The world began to spin. I tried hard to fight the spin, to take in every detail of my surroundings, but it was no use. It all just faded into blackness. I could still hear my own thoughts, though. I could hear myself telling me to look for the unexpected. Look for what did not belong and follow that path. What did I mean by that? Suddenly, I awoke, sweating. I was back at the asylum in my bed. The rain lightly spattered against the window, the faint splashes of puddles outside. It was all just a dream. But it had not felt like a dream. It felt so real. I could still feel the icy substance running through my veins, and I could feel the dull throb where the needle had been inserted into my arm. I looked at the clock. 7 minutes till 8. My day should be starting here soon. I sit up groggily and swing my feet over the side of the bed onto the hard tile floor. I expected to feel cold to the touch of my bare feet, but instead, it feels warm. That is odd. I look around the room, and I get this faint sensation that things are not what they seem to be. Something is different. But I can't quite put my finger on what it is. The sound of my nurse Darlene's footsteps ring out across the hallway. I guess it's time to start my day.